Part 1. The Silence Before the Storm. The city was too quiet. It wasn't the peaceful kind of quiet, the kind that settles in just before dawn when the world sleeps and the air feels still. No, this was different. It was a type of silence that gripped your chest, made your skin crawl, and whispered that something was terribly wrong. Skyline City had always been alive. Streets buzzed with the sound of honking horns, impatient footsteps, and the hum of conversations drifting through open windows. But now there was nothing. No movement, no sound, just the silence and the heavy, suffocating sense that the city was holding its breath. Maya stood at the edge of the rooftop, staring down at the intersection below. 5 floors beneath her, abandoned cars had scattered, doors open, engines dead. Blood streaked across the pavement in long, ugly trails. Phones lay forgotten. Screens cracked, ringing endlessly into the void. She hadn't seen another living person in over 24 hours, and she knew why. It had started with a cough. 3 weeks ago, a string of flu-like symptoms had begun circulating among the city's population. Hospitals were flooded within days. People dropped where they stood, on buses, in grocery store aisles, and office buildings. What came after the coughing was far worse. Fever, hallucinations, aggression, and then hunger. Insatiable, mindless, primal hunger. It wasn't a sickness anymore. It was a plague. They called them the infected. But that word didn't capture what they had become. These weren't people anymore. They didn't think. They didn't speak. They only moved and hunted. Their skin hung in gray patches, eyes clouded over a milky glaze, mouths open in a permanent snarl, as if the virus had locked their faces in scream. And they were fast. Too fast. Maya ducked back from the edge of the rooftop and crouched beside the air conditioning unit, heart racing. The sound of footsteps echoed from the alley below. Wet, uneven slaps against the pavement. She held her breath. 1 infected, maybe 2. She clenched the crowbar tighter in her hand. They couldn't climb. At least, not yet. Her safe house, if you could call it that, was a barricaded apartment 2 blocks from here. The rooftop was just a stopover, a vantage point, a way to stay 1 step ahead of them. But she couldn't stay here forever. She was running low on food and out of bottled water. Sooner or later, she'd have to risk another supply run, and that meant going back down into the streets. The sound below faded. Maya exhaled slowly, creeping toward the rooftop door. She twisted the handle, unlocked. The stairwell loomed in darkness, lit only by a faint emergency light flickering at the top landing. Every creak of the metal stairs echoed like thunder. She paused with every step, listening. The silence down here was different. Closer, thicker, like walking through water. She reached the 3rd floor when she heard it, a soft, gurgling breath. It came from below. Maya froze, pressing herself to the wall. The sound moved, climbing the stairs with jerky, uneven rhythm, 2 floors down, maybe 3. Then a sharp thud, like something slamming against a railing. A hand? A body? She didn't wait to find out. Bounding the last few steps, she shoved open the rooftop door and slammed it behind her. She wedged a nearby pipe into the handle and backed away, chest heaving. That sound, it hadn't been like the others. It was slower, not so mindless. Could they be evolving? She didn't want to think about it. Maya made her way down the fire escape, boots silent on the rusted metal. The city spread before her like a graveyard. Windows shattered, buildings burned out, streets empty except for the blood. So much blood. Her plan was simple. Reach the pharmacy on 9th Avenue. If there was anything left, it would be there. Food, medicine, maybe even clean water. It was a long shot, but it was better than staying put and starving. She moved through alleyways and back streets, sticking to shadows, ears tuned to every sound. Her crowbar stayed clenched in 1 hand, the weight of it oddly comforting. Halfway down 8th Avenue, she found them. Bodies. Dozens of them. Some human, some not. The ground was slick with gore. Limbs twisted unnaturally. Faces frozen in terror. But what chilled her most was how fresh it looked. This hadn't happened days ago. Maybe not even hours. Something had done this. Recently, she scanned the area. Empty storefronts stared back at her like hollow eyes. A wind stirred, carrying the coppery stench of death. And then she heard it. Click, click, click. The sound echoed from behind a nearby dumpster. A slow, scraping drag, followed by breath, wet, ragged. She backed away slowly. Then it stepped into view. It had once been a man. Tall, broad shoulders, dressed in a tattered security uniform. But its face was wrong. Skin drooped off one side like melted wax, revealing the gleam of bone beneath. Its mouth opened in a low, breathy snarl. But its eyes, they focused. They saw her, and it smiled. Maya ran. The thing let out a shriek, inhuman, high-pitched, a sound born of pain and rage. Doors slammed open across the street. Windows shattered. From every corner, they poured out, dozens of them, maybe more. The infected. They chased her down the avenue, barefoot and wild, their bodies convulsing with unnatural speed. Maya turned down an alley, vaulted over a chain fence, and didn't look back. She could hear them behind her, snarling, scraping, howling. She burst into the pharmacy, slamming the door shut and driving a shelf against it with all her strength. The glass cracked under impact as fists began pounding from the other side. "Think," she hissed to herself. "Come on, think." She bolted for the back, weaving through upturned aisles. Shelves were half empty, pill bottles and bandages scattered across the floor. She grabbed what she could, painkillers, gauze, a small bottle of iodine, and shoved them into her backpack. The door at the rear was metal, heavy, locked, but there was a vent above it. She climbed the shelf, muscles burning, and pried open the grate. Inside, the shaft was narrow and choked with dust, but it was her only way out. She pulled herself inside and dragged the grate shut behind her just as the front door gave way. The infected poured into the pharmacy. She didn't dare make a sound. Minutes crawled by. She could hear them below, sniffing, searching, growling in frustration. One passed beneath the vent. Another stopped and looked up. She held her breath, hand pressed over her mouth. It moved on. After what felt like hours, the sounds faded. She crawled forward, praying the vent led to another exit. It did. She dropped into the alley behind the building, knees buckling from exhaustion. The sky was darkening. Night was falling, and she was still trapped in a city with no way out. But now she knew something else. Something worse. They were changing. They were learning. And they had seen her face. Part 2. Shadows that Remember. The sun had slipped below the skyline, leaving the city bathed in bruised shades of purple and black. A low mist crept along the pavement, curling around the bones of abandoned cars and broken light posts. The darkness wasn't just physical now. It was something alive, something that whispered in every corner and stared from every shattered window. Maya's legs were shaking. Her backpack bounced lightly against her shoulders with each step, a painful reminder of how close she'd come to death. The items inside, medicine, a protein bar, a few bottles of water, were hard-won prizes. She clutched the crowbar tighter as she moved to the narrow alley behind the pharmacy, eyes scanning every shadow. The infected had followed her this far, but for now, they'd scattered. Or worse, they were watching. She moved quickly, sticking to back streets and ruined storefronts, ducking behind dumpsters and broken-down cars. The streets were more dangerous at night. That was when they became bold, less primal, more organized. The safe house was 6 blocks away. It felt like 60. The deeper she moved into the heart of the city, the more she realized something had changed. The infected weren't just roaming aimlessly like before. They were waiting, lurking near intersections, nestled in alleyways like predators in a jungle. She passed a convenience store, its windows shattered. Blood smeared the shelves. A body slumped in the doorway, half-eaten, eyes wide, jaw missing. A child shoe lay nearby, covered in gore. Maya swallowed the scream rise in her throat and kept moving. She reached a small parking garage on 12th Street. It had a clear view of her apartment building just a block away. She slipped inside, crouching low behind a concrete pillar. Her breath steamed in the cold night air. And then she saw them, 6 infected, maybe more, gathered outside the building. But they weren't banging at the door. They weren't howling or pacing. They were just standing there, still, silent, facing the building like they were waiting for something. Maya's blood ran cold. They were guarding it. She backed deeper into parking garage. Her mind raced. She couldn't return now, not without leading them straight to the safe house. If they'd figured out where she lived, she needed an alternate shelter, somewhere defensible, somewhere high. Her eyes landed on the old city library across the street. Tall, stone walls, reinforced doors, multiple floors, a place forgotten in the chaos. She made her move. Slipping out from the garage, she kept low, moving fast. The streets whispered around her, paper fluttering, wind howling through hollow buildings. Every sound felt louder at night, every shadow deeper. She reached the library steps. The doors were partially open. She stepped inside, letting the heavy wooden entrance creak shut behind her. The air was thick with dust and decay. Rows of bookshelves stretched out like tombstones. Papers littered the floor. The silence inside was suffocating. She moved carefully. Each step was muffled against the carpet. She climbed the grand staircase, passing old portraits on walls, authors, scholars, ghosts from another world. At the second floor, she found a reading room. It had thick curtains, wide windows, and only one entrance. Good enough. She slid a filing cabinet in front of the door and slumped to the floor, heart still racing. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to breathe, but sleep did not come easy. That night, she dreamed of the man in security uniform, the one who had smiled. She saw his eyes, too human. She heard his voice, distorted and echoing, whispering her name. Maya. She woke with a start. Morning had come, dull and gray. The city outside was cloaked in fog. She checked her supplies, still intact. She unwrapped the protein bar and chewed slowly, stomach growling. She needed answers. Why were they changing? Why were they watching? She thought back to the hospital. That's where it had started. Ground zero. Maybe something was still there. Files. Recordings. Clues. Risky, but if the infected were evolving, she had to understand how and fast. She left the library and headed east toward the hospital district. As she walked, the streets changed. No longer just abandoned, they were marked. Strange symbols smeared on walls in black paint. Circles with eyes in the center. Arrows pointing down sewers. They remember, scrawled in blood on a mailbox. A chill ran down her spine. She passed a church, its doors wide open. Inside, the pews were overturned. A makeshift altar burned at the center, black candles dripping wax onto bones. Something about it made her step back quickly. By the time she reached the hospital, the sky had darkened again. The building stood like a tomb, windows shattered, ivy creeping up its sides. The front doors were twisted open. Inside, the lobby was a wasteland. Overturned gurneys, blood trails, the flickering hum of broken lights. She stepped carefully. She passed reception. Desks were torn apart, papers scattered. A clipboard lay on the floor. Patient 0, Dr. Elena Morris, room 402. Her pulse quickened. 4th floor. She took the stairs. Elevators were too dangerous. Each floor she passed was worse than the last. Burned-out rooms. Scorch marks. Something had happened here. A massacre. At the 4th floor landing, the hallway stretched in eerie silence. Room 402 was at the end. She crept forward. The door was ajar. Inside, the room was surprisingly clean. A metal bed. A single monitor, still blinking faintly. A folder sat on the counter. She opened it. Subject, Elena Morris. Initial symptoms, fever, hallucinations, vocal distortion. Progression, rapid neurological decay followed by hypergression. Final stage, higher cognition restored. Subject exhibits memory recall, communication, and strategic movement. Classified, anomalous. Maya stared. Higher cognition. They were learning. And this woman, Dr. Morris, had come back. Not just as an infected, but as something worse. A shriek echoed through the hallway. Maya dropped the file, heart pounding. The shriek came again, closer. She dove behind the curtain. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. A silhouette moved into the room. Tall. Broad shoulders. A half-melted face. The security guard. He turned his head, sniffing the air. He stepped inside. Maya. Her blood turned to ice. He said her name. He remembered. She didn't move, didn't breathe. The infected man walked to the bed, placing one hand on the file she had opened. Then slowly he smiled again and walked out. She waited another 10 minutes before moving. Her legs shook as she crept from the room and made her way down the stairs, heart hammering with every step. Outside, the fog had lifted, but something else had risen in its place. Across the city, atop buildings, pinned to walls and signs, were messages, written in blood, in ash, in black paint. We see you. You took everything. We remember. They weren't just infected anymore. They were organizing, thinking, hunting. Maya turned and ran. She didn't stop until the library was back in view, its stone walls a thin illusion of safety. She bolted the doors behind her and sank to the floor, shaking. This wasn't a plague. It was a war, and the dead were no longer mindless. They were something else now, something worse. Part 3. The mind behind the eyes. The silence inside the library had changed. It was no longer peaceful or empty. It felt watched. Every creak of the wood, every groan of the stone walls made Maya's skin crawl. She had returned in a frenzy, breathless, mind racing with the files she'd read, and the voice that had called her name. The infected knew her, remembered her. That wasn't supposed to be possible. She sat huddled near the boarded windows, staring into the half-light of morning. The gray sky above the city offered no warmth. Her crowbar sat by her side, her fingers still stained with dried blood and ink from the hospital. The pages she'd taken from room 402 were spread before her like broken truths, testimonies of a city that hadn't fallen by accident. They were always watching, even before the infection spread. She read the files again, slowly. Subject, Elena Morris, lead virologist in Project Helix. Initial exposure to Agent S7 via accidental breach. Symptoms began within 48 hours. Early effects included auditory hallucinations, memory surges, and violent outbursts. At day 5, subject regained cognitive function, speech, and demonstrated strategic behavior. Containment failed. Elena hadn't just gotten sick. She'd become something new. And if the infected could think, what else could they do? She barely had time to process the implications when the sound came, a sharp, rhythmic clang at the front door of the library. Not pounding, not rage, knocking. 3 steady knocks. She froze. No infected had ever knocked before. She crept through the aisles of books, stepping lightly between shelves of ancient tomes and dismembered encyclopedias. The main door, thick oak, reinforced with an iron bar, stood firm, but behind it, shadows danced, and a voice called through the keyhole. Please, I'm not one of them. Male, calm, desperate. Maya didn't move. My name is Assure. I saw you on it last night. I followed from the hospital. Her heart stopped. He saw her? I'm not infected, he said again, but I know what they're becoming. You've seen it too. She hesitated, then pulled her crowbar close and approached the door. Show me your eyes, she whispered. There was a pause. Then a face leaned toward a broken pane, thin, unshaven, smeared with dirt but unmistakably human. His eyes were bloodshot from fatigue, but clear. No clouded iris, no black veins, just fear. Slowly, Maya unlatched the door. He stepped inside quickly, casting nervous glances behind him. Once the door shut, he backed away, hands up in surrender. Thank you. I didn't think I'd find anyone else who understood. Maya stared at him. Who are you? Assure exhaled. I used to be an intern at Helix Labs, under Dr. Morris. The name sent a bolt through her chest. She was brilliant, he said, voice shaking. A little unstable, maybe, but she had this vision. She believed memory was the foundation of identity, that if we could store and retrieve it, We could heal even the worst mental breaks. What does that have to do with this? Maya asked, gesturing at the pages. Everything, Ashur said. The virus wasn't just a bioweapon. It was designed to enhance memory, restore broken cognition, reconnect dying brain cells. It worked at first, but the side effects were catastrophic. Maya sat down slowly. That's why they remember who they were. Ashur nodded. They remember everything. Names, faces, traumas. They're like fractured mirrors. Some shatter, some adapt, some evolve. And the ones that evolve. He hesitated. They're building something. Maya's stomach twisted. In the subway tunnels, he continued, lowering his voice, they've carved out a nest, not just a hideout. A hive? There's writing on the walls. Patterns. Rituals. It's not random. You've seen this. Ashur nodded. I was taken once. I escaped before they turned me, but I saw her. Elena, or what's left of her. Maya's throat went dry. She's leading them, he whispered. She speaks. Commands, like a queen in a hive of insects. And she's after me, Maya said slowly. She knows my name. Ashur's face paled. Then you're part of her memory. Maya stared into the distance. Her mind reeled with images. The calm voice at the hospital, the blank-eyed guards, the drawings on the walls. It wasn't madness. It was structure. A new society forming from the ashes of the old. She stood abruptly. We need to go down there. Ashur's eyes widened. Into the tunnels? I need answers. Before they turn this whole city into a breeding ground for monsters who think like people. Ashur nodded reluctantly. Then we'll need weapons. And light. They spent the next 2 hours scavenging. Maya led them to an old fire station 3 blocks away, still mostly intact. They found flares, a flashlight, some gas canisters, and an old fire axe. But more importantly, in a sealed locker, they found a map of the underground subway system. There it was, Station 9, deep beneath the city. The red line that had been shut down months before the outbreak. Unused, forgotten, or so they thought. That night, under a moonless sky, they slipped through the city. It was quieter than before. Too quiet. The infected weren't patrolling the streets anymore. They were gathering underground. They reached the old subway entrance on 5th and Howard. The stairs descended into shadow, like a throat swallowing them whole. Ashur lit a flare. The walls were smeared with more symbols. Red handprints. Scratched words. She remembers us. We are never alone. The blood sings. Maya clenched her jaw and led the way. The tunnel smelled of rot and rust. Train cars lay abandoned, covered in fungus and dried viscera. Rats scurried in the shadows. But ahead, faintly they heard it. Whispers. Not moaning, not snarling. Voices. Human, or nearly. They moved deeper, past rusted tracks and broken lights, until the tunnel opened into a larger chamber, a forgotten station with high ceilings and shattered pillars. And what they saw stopped them cold. Hundreds of infected knelt in a circle, unmoving, heads bowed. At the center stood a figure draped in torn medical scrubs, hair matted, skin pale as wax. Her eyes glowed faintly in the torchlight. It was Elena Morris. But she was no longer human. She was beyond human. She turned slowly, lifting her face toward them. "Welcome home," she said, voice echoing through the chamber. Ashur stepped back, trembling. Maya held firm. "Why are you doing this?" Elena smiled. "Because the world you knew was broken, filled with lies. Pain. Memory heals us. It makes us stronger. This isn't healing," Maya hissed. "It's madness." Elena's face twitched. "No. Madness was forgetting who we were. Now we remember everything. You, Maya, you killed your brother to survive, didn't you?" Maya's breath caught. "How does she?" Ashur whispered. Elena stepped closer. "He was infected. You didn't know, but you buried the memory. Until now." Maya backed up, hand shaking. "They live in us, Maya. The dead, the memories, the pain. We are the future." The circle of infected stood as one. Hundreds of eyes turned toward her. Elena's hand lifted. "Join us." Ashur grabbed Maya's arm. "Now!" They turned and ran, flares hissing, the sound of footsteps like thunder behind them. The infected moved in unison, not blindly, but with precision, strategic. They barely reached the junction before Maya hurled a flare into the gas canister left behind. Boom! The tunnel lit with fire, collapsing behind them in a storm of stone and screams. They didn't stop running. By the time they emerged back into the city, dawn was bleeding into the sky. They collapsed in an alley, coughing, covered in dust and blood. Maya stared at the rising sun. "They're not just infected anymore," she whispered. Ashur nodded. "They're remembering. And soon the rest of the world will too." Maya looked at the city, at the quiet streets, at the empty sky, and for the first time since the outbreak began, she feared the living dead less than the ones who came after. Let me know when you're ready for Part 4, 2,000 words. Part 4, Memory is a Weapon. The city was still asleep, not in the peaceful, forgotten way, but in the way that comes before a storm. Every shadow seemed to twitch. Every gust of wind carried whispers that didn't belong. Maya and Ashur sat in silence at the edge of an old rooftop, watching the rising sun stretch its blood-orange fingers across the skyline. Smoke curled upward from the collapsed tunnel behind them. The city's bones groaned. Neither spoke for a long time. Then Ashur broke the silence. "They'll rebuild the hive." Maya nodded. "And next time, they'll make sure we don't get away." Ashur turned to her. "Did she really know about your brother?" Maya's throat tightened. "Yes, I never told anyone." "And she remembered it. She used it." Ashur's hands clenched. "This virus, it's more than just biology. It's data. Memories being passed and shared like files in a network. They're becoming a hive not just in body, but in mind." Maya stood. "We need to find the source. Not the hive. The origin. Someone started this. And I think it was never meant to be stopped." Ashur nodded slowly. Helix Labs had a contingency. A clean server, Project Echo. It stored Elena's work remotely before the virus went wild. A vault of every file, including what the virus was supposed to be. Maya looked at him. "Where?" Ashur swallowed. "The arcology." She went still. "You're insane." "No, just desperate." The arcology was a self-sustaining megastructure on the city's western edge, once a shining monument to corporate power, now sealed autonomous, and according to rumor, still operational. "You're telling me there are people in there?" Maya asked. Ashur shook his head. "Not people, not anymore. Just systems, security AIs, automated labs, and maybe one more thing." Maya narrowed her eyes. "What?" Ashur hesitated. "Elena's original memory core." The words dropped like lead. "You're saying she uploaded herself?" "She was dying. The infection was moving too fast. She needed a way to finish her work, without her body. She didn't want to die. She wanted to evolve." Maya stared into the distance. "If we destroy that core?" Ashur nodded. "We sever the connection. Cut the infected off from the source of shared memory. They'll lose coordination. Collapse." Maya grabbed her crowbar. "Then we go to the arcology." They traveled for hours across the ruined city. The infected no longer wanted the streets. They were being called. Maya noticed a strange absence everywhere they went. It was too organized. The infected were retreating, preparing. By mid-afternoon, the monolith of the arcology appeared on the horizon like a tombstone of glass and steel. Over 300 stories tall, it had once been home to 10,000 people. Now it loomed silently, shrouded in fog. They approached the perimeter wall, thick concrete, lined with auto turrets and motion sensors. Ashur led her through an old maintenance tunnel beneath the wall. It stank of mildew and oil, but it was unguarded. The tunnels had been forgotten. The systems hadn't. As they emerged into the loading bay, the lights above flickered to life. The arcology was still awake. "Welcome, Dr. Morris," a synthetic voice said calmly. Maya froze. Assure's face drained of color. "She's in the system," he whispered. "The doors open on their own. Proceed to Research Wing Alpha." They exchanged a look, then stepped into the belly of the beast. Inside, the arcology was pristine. Lights flickered. Floors gleamed. The air was sterile. It was like time had stopped just before the outbreak. Holograms flickered with corporate propaganda. A better tomorrow today. Rebuilding humanity through science. The deeper they went, the louder the hum of machines became. They passed empty cafeterias, silent offices, and dormitories with beds still made. The eerie cleanliness was worse than decay. Then came the labs. Glass walls, sealed chambers, vats of pale blue fluid with shapes floating inside. Some malformed, some human-like, others still shifting under chemical mist. Maya whispered, "She's still experimenting." A voice answered her. "Not experimenting. Refining." They turned. A hologram appeared, Elena's face, serene and radiant, projected from the ceiling. But her eyes were wrong. Too bright, too focused. "You came all this way to kill me," she said. Maya raised her crowbar. "You're already dead." "No, I escaped. I freed myself from the weaknesses of flesh. Now I remember every moment, every test, every death, and I will not let it be in vain." "You created monsters," Maya said. "I created survivors." Assure stepped forward. "You connected them, like a single organism." "Yes," Elena said. "Each mind, a thread in the tapestry. Alone, they were broken. Together, they are whole." "They're not whole," Maya said. "They're prisoners. You control them." "I guide them," Elena replied, "just as I can guide you." The walls shimmered. Screens lit up with images of Maya, her childhood, her family, her brother's infection, his death, moments she'd buried. "You live in guilt, Maya. You hide from the truth. But I can give you peace. I can make you remember without pain." Maya looked away. "I don't want to forget," she said quietly. Elena's face flickered. "Then you are obsolete." The lights turned red. Turrets dropped from the ceiling. Assure screamed, "Run!" They sprinted down the corridor as gunfire shredded the air behind them. Doors slammed shut. Systems activated. Maya bashed through a side panel with her crowbar, pulling Assure into a maintenance shaft. They dropped down 2 levels into the server core. The temperature fell. The air buzzed. Tower machines lined the walls, cables snaking like vines. At the center was a transparent chamber pulsing with blue light. Inside floated a neural web, a lattice of glowing threads suspended in a gel. The memory core. Elena's mind. Assure approached the control panel. "I can overload the coolant. We got maybe 3 minutes before this thing melts." Maya nodded. "Do it." As Assure typed, Elena's voice boomed through the chamber. "You think destroying me will stop them? They are more than me now. They have each other. They will remember." Maya turned to the core. "No, you're the link. Cut the link, and they're just broken reflections again." Elena's hologram appeared one last time. "You could have been part of something beautiful." Maya stepped closer. "No, just something terrifying." Assure shouted, "Now!" She swung the crowbar. The glass cracked. Again. Again. Steam hissed. Coolant sprayed. The lights dimmed. She screamed and smashed the core with all her strength. Crack. The web inside pulsed once, then shattered like glass. The chamber exploded in light, and everything went dark. Maya woke in rubble. Assure groaned nearby. The arcology was still, silent, and then, far off, the noise. Wailing. Not organized, not coordinated. Just pain, panic, disorientation. She climbed to her feet, staring through the cracked walls at the city beyond. The infected were screaming, clutching their heads. staggering in circles. Without the hive mind, they were lost. Alone again, she looked at Ashur. We did it. He nodded, dazed. She's gone. Maya turned to the skyline. The city wasn't saved, but it had been freed. At least for now. Part 5. The silence that remains. The city was quieter now. No screams echoed through the alleyways. No synchronized footsteps beat against the cracked streets. The infected still roamed, but their motions were erratic, glitching, broken things. They clutched at their heads, moaning, some even collapsing where they stood, as if their bodies couldn't function without the mind that once guided them. Maya stood on the rooftop of a burned-out school, surveying what was left. Ashur limped up beside her, one hand clutching his ribs. They hadn't spoken much since the arcology. There was little to say. Do you think they'll die off now? Maya asked. Ashur shook his head. Not all of them. The virus isn't gone, just disconnected. They'll survive, but they won't be able to coordinate. No more hives. No more cities falling overnight. She looked at him. And no more Elena? He paused. Not in the system, but the virus carries memory. We know that now. Somewhere out there, one of them might still hold a fragment of her, or worse, try to be her again. Maya let the silence sit for a while. Then she whispered, I still hear her sometimes, in my head. Ashur looked over. That's not her. That's trauma. Your brain trying to make sense of everything. Maya wasn't so sure. They decided to make for the city edge. Now that the arcology's AI was down, the containment fences would have defaulted to low power. There might be a gap, a weakness they could slip through. On the way, they passed scenes frozen in time. A train stalled on elevated tracks, half derailed, its windows still lit. A restaurant with plates of food untouched, as if the patrons had simply evaporated. Playgrounds full of twisted swings and dolls with missing eyes. And among it all, the infected. Not hunting, not chasing, just existing. Some stood motionless, staring at nothing. Others scratched walls or drew symbols in the dirt, circles, webs, fractals. Some even spoke, though incoherently. Maya stopped at the edge of a plaza. An infected child sat on the ground, humming to herself, smearing something red onto the pavement. Ashur started to reach for his weapon. No, Maya whispered. She's not a threat. He hesitated, then nodded. The girl looked up, her eyes pale and unfocused, and simply blinked, then went back to drawing. It chilled Maya deeper than screams ever could. They found the breach in containment fence by nightfall, an old maintenance gate, rusted and half pried open. On the other side, the forest, open space, air that didn't reek of chemicals and blood. They stepped through together, and for the first time in weeks, Maya breathed freely. They camped in a small ravine that night. No fire, just cold rations and exhausted silence. Ashur eventually broke it. When we get out, what then? We tell someone, Maya said. The right people, scientists, governments. Ashur looked skeptical. You think they'll listen? If they don't, someone else will. We can't let this be forgotten. He looked up at the stars. I used to believe in the work, that it would make things better, give humanity a second chance. But we made something we couldn't understand, something that wanted to be more than us. Maya stared at the sky. It still does. By morning, they found a road. A faded sign read, South Point, 22 miles. A survivor camp had been rumored near there before the blackout. If it still stood, it might have working comms, a way to warn the outside world. They moved quickly. The forest felt safer, but there were signs, blood trails, torn clothes, broken branches. Some infected had made it out. By the second day, they heard it, a low hum, distant engines. They climbed a ridge and saw it, an outpost, surrounded by barricades and searchlights, trucks, tents, uniformed people moving between stations. Maya almost collapsed from relief. Ashur caught her. We made it. The guards were cautious, guns drawn, but they didn't shoot. When Maya showed them the infected's marking on her neck, Elena's symbol, they froze. They took them in. The camp wasn't government. It wasn't military. It was private. Centaur Defense Solutions. Corporate. Maya was questioned for hours in a cold trailer. They took samples, ran scans, monitored her sleep. Assure, too. After 48 hours, they let her walk the grounds. She saw other survivors, dirty, exhausted, but alive. Some were infected, but dormant, monitored, sedated. A man in a white coat approached her. "You're Maya Holden?" She nodded. "I read your file. You were in archaeology." "I destroyed the core." He smiled faintly. "So we saw. The signal went dark the moment you broke containment. Impressive." She frowned. "You saw." He gestured toward a tower. "We've been monitoring the city, mapping the hive growth, studying the virus's expansion." Maya stepped back. "You knew, and you didn't stop it." The man's smile vanished. "We couldn't interfere. The data was too valuable. You must understand, Ms. Holden, this isn't just a catastrophe. It's an opportunity." Maya felt cold. "You want to use it." He didn't answer. "Where's Assure?" she asked. The man's eyes flicked to the side. "He's being processed." Maya ran. She found the lab tent. Assure was inside, strapped to a gurney, unconscious. Monitors beeped. A screen showed something horrifying. Brain waves interlaced. 2 patterns. 1 human. 1 not. "Elena." "She survived," Maya whispered. The man behind her spoke softly. "The virus copied her. Fragments remained. Your friend has a particularly receptive mind. Adaptive. Resilient. She's rebuilding in him." "No!" Maya backed away. "Shut it down. Kill the signal." He shook his head. "We've never seen integration like this. He's becoming something new." Maya pulled a syringe from a nearby table. The man noticed too late. She jammed it into the power console. The screen sparked and went black. The alarm sounded. Assure gasped awake, screaming. But the scream was not his. It was hers. Maya ripped off the straps and pulled him free. Security burst in. She fought like a wild animal, swinging a metal tray, smashing lights. They escaped through the back, dodging gunfire, running through tents and over fences. Assure was dazed, barely able to speak. They ran until the camp was just smoke behind them. They hid in a cave that night. Assure trembled. "She's inside me." "No," Maya said. "She's broken. What's left is noise." "She was showing me things," he whispered. "Not memories. Visions. Cities grown from flesh. Skies swarming with thought. Evolution without mercy." "She's gone," Maya insisted. But she wasn't sure. Not entirely. They reached a town by the ocean a week later. It was half flooded, empty, but it had power. A working satellite uplink. Maya sent the files, the archaeology logs, the virus data, everything, through a secure channel to multiple destinations. She made copies, buried them online, left trails. So if she and Assure didn't survive, the truth would. Assure sat on the beach most nights, staring at the waves. Some days he was himself. Other days, less so. He told her once, "We think we're individuals, but memory is a web. When enough threads cross, we become the web." Maya didn't sleep much after that. Months passed. One morning, she woke to find Assure gone. No footprints. No note. Just a symbol drawn in the sand. A spiral. She searched for days. But deep down she knew. Elena wasn't dead. She had learned to hide, to wait, and to remember. Conclusion. Only mutation. Only memory. Because in the end, the infected weren't the real threat. The idea was, and ideas never die. They just wait and whisper until someone listens.